and some of the online networks that they have. And a lot of the events I went to were in London and outside London, and I felt there was a big gap in the market for places like Birmingham. So I decided to visit the owners and the managers of Asian Single Solutions and say, well, what are you going to do about the professionals in the Birmingham and outside Birmingham? Because I feel, I'd like to offer my services or do something positive for those professionals who are seeking potential partners, be it divorcees or people who've been separated.
Well, a lot of the other dating agencies or matrimonial sites, they will not cater to divorcees and will, have it clearly written that divorcees are pretty much not welcome. Asian Single Solutions, that's clearly not the case.
It's not the case with Asian Single Solutions. If people log on, asiansinglesolutions.com, there's people registered on the site who come to the events as well, who are separated, divorced, also have children as well, and they can write that in their profiles.
Well, you were saying when we were talking before the show that when you meet people at these events, you are very upfront with them and you tell them pretty much right away that you are a divorcee. What kind of reaction do you get?
Lots of people say, well, actually, I went down that road, Deep, and I can understand some of the issues that you've experienced, and this is where I am now. 5 years ago, I was very, very depressed. Asian Single Solutions has opened a window for me. This is a fantastic way of networking and meeting other professionals who've gone through similar experiences. But on the other hand, I do feel there's still that stigma attached to so-called professionals and also some of the family networks and people who might have some traditional values in terms of being an Asian woman or an Asian man who has been through divorce and potentially who has children as well.
When you are, do you wish to, at some point in the future, to get remarried?
I'd think very, very carefully, but yes, I would. But again, the decision I'd take, I'd be very more careful and tread very, very carefully about the choice I'd make.
Well, like Reshma mentioned earlier, you never really get to know a person until you live with them. So what advice would you give to women watching us today who might be in a situation where they're meeting prospective partners? Is there any kind of warning signs or any clues that they can look for that this marriage might not work?
I think you always got to trust your gut, really. Always trust your gut and try and find it.
What was your gut telling you when you first met your ex-husband?
When I first met my ex-husband, I knew that this is a person I wanted to pursue my life with, but also my gut told me when things were going wrong. There was a lot of deceitful and lying behaviour, lots of issues with other women as well, catalogue of issues in terms of employment. There was a lot of things, and I think my gut told me that this is the right thing to do, Kuldeep. It's a hard decision to take, but you're going to have to take this journey. And I'm glad that I did, because I try to find myself again. And also I haven't got the catalogue of issues with his family and the pressure, on me as an Asian professional woman.
Do you think for Asian couples in particular, a lot of these marriages that don't work out, do you think the in-laws have a role to play in the
absolutely.
marriage?
I think it gets more complex, particularly if you're married to the only son. Very, very protective about that son. This is a done thing to do in our family. I think it's a lot more challenging, and I think family played a big role, a very, very big role in terms of my divorce. And I believe there was influences from his family to say Kuldeep is not acceptable for this family. You need to get rid of her. But then in the end, I could sense there was issues around the behaviour, body language. Some of the signs were already there.
Do you think that's ever going to change, though? I mean, in Asian households, when it comes to a son, the mother-son relationship, mother-in-laws are usually very possessive about their sons. Do you think that's ever going to change?
I think it depends on the individual. If a man is able to be strong enough to say, actually, this is my wife, I took my vows to be with her, I respect you as a mum and a dad, but at the end of the day, I've also got a duty in terms of listening to my wife's views. But if you get the other extreme where you can get partners and beat males who can conform and actually say, I'm going to side with my mum. And I think that's where the juggling act gets hard and there's no compromise. It's very much, my mum and dad said this and this is a done thing. And you can feel very isolated, and it's a bit like a power struggle between two
When you
parties.
speak to the generation above ours, they will say that this generation of Asians aren't willing to compromise. They're not very tolerant, that they take marriage too lightly. Do you think that's the case?
I think it depends on the individuals, really. I think some people do try and patch things up, try and get counselling and mediation, and there's lots of different ways now that people can try and resolve things. And often talk to the so-called bajorlis sometimes used to get involved.
Did you try that? Did you try counselling? Did you try to get family involved and try to, take all these different avenues before you got divorced?
I didn't. I felt I'd learnt enough, and in terms of my husband's behaviour, because another female was actually on the scene. It was very apparent what was going on, and I thought to myself, this is a behaviour that's been probably been going on for time whilst I was ill. It's not behaviour that it's acceptable, and also I think the trust had gone. Once the basic foundations have gone, I believe there's nothing left, and I took that decision to get divorced on the grounds of, for me, those basic principles are really important.
Sure.
And once one of those is broken, I thought, I don't want to be looking over my shoulder in 2 years' time to say, well, actually, is my husband at work today? Or is he at work? Or where is he today?
Yeah.
It's all built on trust, and I think once the trust is
well,
gone...
I guess, when the trust is gone, the marriage is over.
Yeah.
You're watching Broken Silence. We're talking about Asian divorce. Is there still a stigma attached to being an Asian divorcee? We'll be hearing more from Kuldeep after this short break. Hi, welcome back to Broken Silence. I'm Sanyya Gardez. We're talking about Asian divorcees, and joining me on the panel is Brian Moore, a political officer from the Newcastle Conservative Party, clearly not Asian, but of the opinion that having a stigma is a good thing. Brian, please explain.
Right, okay. You look at the 1960s in very much white Britain, the stigma meant that if a divorced woman was walking down the street, other women would cross the road. Stigma was as strong as that. But if you look back in those periods, you had strong families, you had the levels of crime, all the social problems that we now see, the country did not have. What white people have done, men, particularly white men have done, is since the stigma has been removed, they've walked away. A lot of them have walked away from their responsibilities of looking after their children, families, or whatever. Do you really want that for the Asian community to end up with council estates full of Asian single mothers?
But are you then telling people that are watching, Asian women that are watching, that are in an unhappy marriage to just stay?
Or are you suggesting that a Asian male after 15, 20 years of marriage downgrades to a younger model?
No, we're no, I know where you're going with this. We're not saying that. However, the stigma that is in the Asian community to being a divorcee is keeping a lot of women that might be in an abusive marriage or in an unhealthy situation from leaving because of the reaction from extended family, from the community.
If you have an extended family that cares for a woman, they will have, hopefully they would have stopped that abuse. No one is talking about stigma from someone who's been abused, attacked, beaten up every night or whenever.
What if a woman is just not happy? She's with this guy and it's not working, the magic is gone, and she wants to leave. You're telling her to stay?
No, what I'm saying is, if life becomes that easy, marriage is not about going out and buying a McDonald's. You know, if you're just going to get married and think, well, okay, I've tried this one. Let's go to an Asian an Asian dating site. Whoopee. Life has to have more substance than that. And what socially has made Asian society, Indian subcontinent so strong has been the family. Now, if you remove the stigma of divorce from males or women, doesn't matter which, right? We have a government that actively encourages families to split with the working tax credit and benefits system. What is there to stop a social breakdown? Because you can't look at divorce and the stigma of divorce. Because why? A simple question for you, and it has to be for your viewers as well.
Right.
Why did the stigma of divorce first start? Why over many generations, Asian generations, have people encouraged the family to remain?
Well, there is this word in Urdu, izzat, family, reputation, respect. And that's the main reason why Asian families would rather have a daughter in a marriage that she doesn't want to be in than leave, because it reflects badly on the family.